All right, testing. We're good. Let me, maybe no. We'll leave it there. Let's get some music going. I'm gonna test something real quick though. It didn't work. I think the stream is not connected correctly. Let me try it again. Okay. Well, we'll work on it later. Also, gonna use the Streamlabs chatbot, but I guess it's not working. That's okay. We can try it another time. Well, that works. Just not type it in right. Test. We gotta put it in bot. Nothing. Not sure why it's not connected, but we're just gonna have to move on. Maybe I need to make a bot account. Who knows? It's okay. Just don't like when things don't work out. All right. Uh-oh. My screen's not showing. Oh, I know. It's not on. It's no longer Hopog. All right. Let's get some music going. Got the Elgato working. I'm just gonna play my synth music. So this is the music I've been listening to lately, which I think is like kind of cool because there's no lyrics. Plus, allows you to stay focused. Synth music. So I turned it down just a little bit, but I don't know if it's too loud. I still don't know how to turn it down. I don't know, Jose, is the music too loud? Or can you hear my voice? Okay, just gonna go ahead and move on. Why is it so small? That's weird. I'm gonna rename it. And change this. Configure the audio. Technical difficulties. All right, there we go. I'm not sure why it was coming out so small, but it was. All right, we're good now. Let's get to my notes. So we're gonna do a quick review. Sorry for the delay, and sorry that I've been streaming in a while, but I was trying to get everything together. I actually had some new stuff to coming in the Mac. I was gonna get a new shock mount and a boom arm for my mic, so it wouldn't pick up all of my clicks and such. But we're getting there. So I want to go ahead and do a quick review of what I've learned as far as state and lifecycle goes. State we talked about was the current situation that your code is under, and then lifecycle was like a series of changes in the life of a component, and we already know what a component is. Lifecycle methods were the following. It was like mounting, unmounting. I believe there was like, well, component did mount, component will unmount, things like that. But that the component should be reusable and encapsulated. And then local state was available only in the class. I have to review that, but let's keep going. So the first thing we did was we separated the React DOM.render. We take it out, and then we separated the render into a tick function. Then here we created a clock function that was basically the component, and these were the props. So the new date became props that we're going to pass to it through this interval here, through this tick function. And then when we pass in tick, every 1 second it would run this, and with a new date, then it might send it to root. We'll start speaking Spanish here. And then let me see here. I really wish that the volume was a little bit lower. I don't know if it's too loud on the stream, but like I can literally, like perfect right there, nailed it. Okay, and then let's see, the class constructor function will set the initial state. So here we had, we built the constructor that took in props, and then we use the React.component, gets the props as well. And then we set it here, this dot state equals an object with date as I guess as a method because you're returning a new date. And then render would return the component. And then the state is set here, this dot state dot date to local or locale time string. Okay. And we actually went further because here we all did this. We had the same thing that we saw here, and then we went to here, and once the component did mount, once this the render's finished. Well, let's just to be sure, let's make sure we really understand what's going on here, right? So after div, we're going to alert render. Oh, that's right. I already had it open. Oops. Okay, so here we have it didn't actually render. And I think it's because I don't have it in as an object. Let's see if that works. There you go. So it's rendered. And then we said that once the component did mount, okay. Oh, it's doing it every second. That's right, because it's constantly being re-rendered after the second. So let's do that. She's gonna refresh it. Okay. Okay, mounted right here, and then clear the interval this dot time ID. And I think this is where we left off. You're not supposed to know what that means. Then we go on to constructor props. No, we went to adding lifecycle methods. This is where we were. Component will unmount. And we never got here actually. So let's see here. In applications with many components, it's very important to free up resources taken by the components when they're destroyed. We want to set up a timer whenever the clock is rendered to the DOM for the first time. This is called mounting. That's what we did here when we mounted it here. Then it says we also want to clear that timer whenever the DOM produced by the clock is removed. This is called unmounting in React. We can declare special methods on the component class to run some code when the component mounts and unmounts. I think what it's saying here is that like when you where's it at? Component did unmount, or I'm sorry, component will unmount. When we clear that, or that happens when we go to the next virtual DOM. We also want to clear that timer when the DOM produced by the clock is removed. This is called unmounting in React. We can declare special methods on the component class to run some code when a component mounts and unmounts. Okay. These methods are called lifecycle methods. The component did mount method runs after the component output has been rendered to the DOM. This is a good place to set up a timer. So we put in timer, and if I remember correctly, we said this could be an arbitrary code. And if we really wanted to, we could comment this out and then put it here, alert, this is timer ID being executed. And then we do that here. This is time to be executed, and it should do it like every second, right? So it's gonna do it for however many seconds. The component did mount method runs after the component output has been rendered to the DOM. This is a good place to set up a timer. We did that. Note how we save the timer ID right on this timer ID. While this props is set up by React itself, and this state has a special meaning, You are free to add additional fields to the class manually if you need to store something that doesn't participate in a data flow, like a timer ID. We will tear down the timer and the component will unmount Lifecycle. And we did this actually here. Finally, we'll implement a method called tick at the clock. Component will run every second. It will use the set state to schedule updates to the component local state. Now the clock ticks every second. Let's quickly recap what's going on and the order in which the methods are called. When clock is passed to React DOM.render, React calls the constructor of the clock component. Since clock needs to display the current time, it initializes this .state with an object including the current time. We will later update the state. The constructor is called. We set the state to, I did this myself, but, and then we put a new date, right? React then calls the clock component is rendered. So first this gets called, and then the render method gets called. This is how React learns how what should it? Sleepy. When the clock output is, no, React then updates the DOM to match the clock's render output. When the clock output is inserted in the DOM, React calls the component didMount Lifecycle method inside it. The clock component asks the browser to set up a timer to call the component's tick method once a second. So here, this is the didMount right here. It's going to call this set interval with a function that does this .tick, ticks here. This .change ticks, I did that myself, don't worry about that. And we're going to do that every second. Every second the browser calls the tick method. Inside it, the cloud component schedules a UI update by calling setState. Every second the browser calls the tick method. This .setState date new date. Call X knows this state has changed and calls it. Every second the browser calls the tick method. Inside it, cloud component schedules a UI update by calling setState with an object containing the current time. Thanks to the setState call, React knows the state has changed and calls the render method again to learn what should be on the screen. This time, this .state.date and the render method will be different. And so the render output would include the updated time, recent updates, and the DOM accordingly. Okay. So all that's saying is because we have to set because we're setting the state each time, it's going to send a call to the what did it say here? The set state. It's going to call set state and it's going to renew everything that needs to be renewed. Like in this case, when I did change text, it's going to only change the text, which is originally this. This .change text. No, I'm sorry here. The time is now, and then it changes to Spanish, and it says son las. So if we look here and I refresh it, the first time it's going to say the time is now, and then it's going to say son las, because of that call to set state that I made. And if I remove this, it won't happen. Nothing will happen. As a matter of fact, it'll just say the time is now, because there's nothing to update where it says here this dot say text, and then up here there's the time is now. There's nothing to change, so it's not going to change. But if I put it back, it would do it. Okay, so we're moving on from there. Now, using state correctly, there are 3 things you should know about. Set state. Do not modify state directly. This dot state dot comment hello. Instead, use set state. So instead of doing, we only use state at the very beginning in the constructor. This dot state, right? And then after that, we have to use set state. The only place where you can assign this dot state is the constructor. I just said that. State updates may be asynchronous. React may batch multiple set state calls into a single update for performance. Because this dot props, and this dot state may be updated asynchronously, you should not rely on their values for calculating the next state. It's one of those things I'm gonna have to rewrite that. Because this dot props and this dot state may be updated asynchronously, you should not rely on their values for calculating the next state. For example, this code may fail to update the counter. To fix it, use a second form of set state that accepts a function rather than an object. That function will receive the previous state as first argument, and the props at the time the update is applied. And the props at the time the update is applied as the second argument. I want to read that again. That function will receive the previous state as the first argument. You know, I just realized it's supposed to be down here. There you go. Sorry. Not that you need to see me. Anyways. So what this is saying is essentially, if you want to capture the previous state, you have to create a function instead of an object. So maybe trying to think of how I could test that, but I think I understand it, so let's keep going. To fix, use a second form of set state that accepts a function rather than an object. That function will receive the previous state as the first argument, and the props at the time of the update is applied as the second argument. Let's keep going. We used an arrow function above, but it also works with regular functions, which is this right here. State updates are merged. When you call set state, React merges the object you provide into the current state. For example, your state may contain several independent variables. Then you can update them independently with separate set state calls. Okay. React merges the object you provide into the current state. So I think what it's saying is, like, if you have this dot state equals this object, when you do this dot set state, it equals, it merges the same object. So it'll say, let's say run is 1. I'm just making it up. And then the new one is gonna have a different, you know, it can have walk 2, but we'll also have run 1. That's what I'm assuming is what it means. So yeah, let's roll with that. Your state may contain several independent variables, and you can add them independently with separate set state calls. Oh, I get it now. Okay. So here we're creating the state with posts and comments, and then here we can actually affect them with different functions. All right, let's keep going. The merging is shallow, so this dot set state comments leaves this dot state posts intact, but completely replaces this dot state comment dot comments. Okay, let's see what's going on. The data flows. I should write that down somewhere though, you know. I think all that's saying is that it can, that you can put as many independent variables inside the state when you set the state, but then you can affect them differently here. So if you notice that we put them in the same object, but here we affected them from a different function. Then you have to, I feel like the merging is shallow, so that's how you read that. Data flows down. That's where I got kind of lost last time. Neither parent nor child components can know if a certain component is stateful or stateless. I'm getting distracted because I know this thing in front of me is difficult. I need to get back to focus, but it's just, this stuff is scary. All right. It says neither parent nor child components can know if a certain component is stateless or stateful, and they shouldn't care whether it is defined as a function or a class. This is why state is often called local or encapsulated. It is not accessible to any component other than the one that owns and sets it. So to me, all that means is that the component is only affected by itself. This is why state is often called local or encapsulated. It's not accessible to any component other than the one that owns and sets it. Component may choose to pass its state down as props to its child component. It is this dot state dot date to locale time string. This also works for user-defined components. Formatted date equals this dot state dot date. The formatted date component would receive the date in its props and wouldn't know whether it came from clock state, from the clock's props, or was typed by hand. This is called a top-down or unidirectional data flow. Any state is always owned by some specific component, and any data or UI derived from that state can only affect components below them in the tree. If you imagine a component tree as a waterfall of props, each component state is like an additional water source that joins it at an arbitrary point, also flows down. To show that all components are truly isolated, we can create an app component that renders 3 clocks. Each clock, man, do I need to do that? Let me try it. So I have the clock here. And oh, all right. So we have 3 clocks with an HR here. Well, it's supposed to be longer than that, but whatever. So we have 3 different clocks, and well, let's just keep reading because I want to make sure I get it right. Each clock sets up its own timer and updates independently. In React apps, whether a component is stateful or stateless is considered an implementation detail of a component that may change over time. You can use stateless components inside stateful components and vice versa. I don't know what that means there. In React apps, whether a component is stateful or stateless is considered an implementation detail of the component that may change over time. You can use stateless components inside stateful components and vice versa. I'm gonna post that question. I need some help. I have that answer next time. Man, it said here of the methods, but I only saw one. All right. Well, I think we're good for that. What did I learn today? I definitely learned that data flows down, meaning that we can get props from parents, but we can't pass parents upward. I'm sorry, we can't send props to the parent. And then we learned that state updates are merged, meaning when we have this, we can affect it by 2 different things, 2 different calls or methods. I didn't understand this part either. Let me try to go back over this. State updates may be asynchronous. React may batch multiple set state calls into a single update for performance. Because this dot props and this dot state may be updated asynchronously, you should not rely on their values for calculating. Oh yeah, I remember this. So in other words, you're gonna have to call a function instead of you can't get a former state from the object. You have to actually run a function to retrieve that state, I think is what it's trying to say. So like let's say oh, you know how I can do this? Let's see. We can index go to clock and then we're going to do text 1, text 2, la hora es, I'm just making this up, so don't judge my Spanish. Okay, so we're going to change the text, and we're going to do it here. So here, we would say if this let me see again. Okay, so we're going to pass in state. Okay, if state equals if state equals the time is now. Man, I'm losing myself. Hold on. Okay, here we go. Say it will be order is, or better yet, so let's, and then if else oh, that failed to compile. Oh, come. I tried. Maybe it's because I put state props. I'll work on this and see what I come up with. Where though? What I need to do is just isolate this real quick. Okay. And then put alert. Let's just see if we can get an alert out of this. And then maybe I can do this. I need to know what these are. Let's alert this console log state. I didn't get a console alert. All right, it's an object, that's for sure. Why aren't you in the console? Okay, so why didn't that work? At least we know that we got the state right. Okay, let's go with, all right. If this, no, state.text. Oh, maybe that's why I got it wrong. Equals, did I put the? Yeah, the time is now. State.text equals son las. Let me see if that works. Yay, I got it to work. Yeah, baby. Okay, so now, else, I'm gonna change it back. State.text equals time now. So I should go back and forth. Nice. Okay, so now explanation time, right? What happens here is that in order to get the former state, you have to pass in the current state into the set state so it can know exactly what it had before prior to. So that's a good lesson to learn just in case you wanted to, if you're filling out a form, I guess, something like that. But yeah, that's pretty cool. All right. Cool. All right, guys, that's it. I'm going to go watch the Texas game. Go Texans. See you guys later.